Hey everyone, Sam here at Model Chili Scale Models, and I'm back with a kit from Moebius, the 2001 A Space Odyssey Discovery X-Ray Delta 1, and this is the 1:350 scale kit, so the smaller of the two kits that they released a few years ago now. So just having a quick look inside, we've got the instruction book and a few bags of plastic there. Quite a small kit, but as you can see, quite a few parts there, quite tiny bits that build up to make the long superstructure. Some metal rods, a few clear parts, metal antenna bars for the communications device, and this metal rod that'll go down the spine of the ship just to give it a little bit more strength. Looks like there's some tiny gaps around the edge there. I think that's just due to the mould just being slightly out of sync. Now for this rear panel here, there isn't much indication as to how to align it correctly on the back of the other ring, but the instructions say that the D-shaped tab, this one at the top, should be aligned at the top position. So it should go right there. Alright, so that's the command sphere done, and yeah, there's a few tiny little gaps here and there, but I can address those later before painting. But now it's time to move on to the propulsion block. Alright, so that's the command sphere and the propulsion block done. It's pretty symmetrical, identical on the top and bottom. the instructions just called out, just to align some of these tabs on these connector pieces up correctly. So I've got a little tab that sticks out the top on that side and the same on this side. So it's going to all join up along that alignment somehow. And now to move on to the cargo modules, which yeah, there's quite a few of them, so it's going to be a lot of repetition there. Alright, so that's 60 cargo modules completed. Yeah, quite a tedious job, but glad it's done. And those attach to 3 spine sections that go down the middle there, and those 3 sections are supported by this metal rod. So hopefully it all lines up and sits nice and straight. But next, the instructions move on to assembling the antenna module. So the main goal here is to take these photo etched antenna pieces there. You've got 1 large one in the middle and 4 smaller ones. I think you only need 2, so maybe there's 2 spare. And we've got these plastic jigs. So you attach the photo etch piece to the back of this disc, as seen here, to gently conform the metal to the curves of the disc, and the same with the small ones with this. With this tiny jig. So it's going to be fun. And so once those are bent in shape, then you just attach them to the dishes for the main antenna assembly. So, let's see how that goes. Well, I managed to get it on, but I can't actually get it off again because the peg is too wide, I guess. It's too tight. I can't really pull it off, so I think I'm just going to clip off that middle bit. And the same with the big one. I think it'll just be easier to work with. And this is just because it's so small, it's just not really bending. So I think the small one is just a little bit useless, to be honest. I don't think I'll bother with these small ones. The curve is so small, you're not really going to notice it anyway. Let's see how the big one goes. Yeah, either the metal's too springy or this is just not working at all. Like you bend it to the shape of the disc and then it just springs back again. So yeah, nice idea, Moebius, but it's just not working for me. I think I'll just use my finger to gradually push it and bend on the edges just to introduce a slight curve to it. But I think that's as good as it's going to get. Yeah, that'll probably do. Alright, so here they are, mounted on a bit of blue tack. So I ended up bending the small ones just a little bit, just by placing them on the end of a cotton bud and gently pressing down on the crossbars. And then they're just pinned down into the dish with the spike, and then just glued in the middle. So you don't really need to super glue the metal bits, because they're held in place with the spike acting like a pin. And for this one I glued the pin down the base and then just super glued the crossbar in the middle there. So very fiddly job, but wasn't too difficult in the end. Alright, so there's the antenna assembly all complete. And now the next job is to attach the 60 cargo modules to the spine of the ship. And here's the first segment. So it just kind of alternates all of the different sized cargo modules down each section. There, so there's two of this length, and then there's a final longer length at the back. And these are the instructions for each module placement. So you've got the various sized modules there. They're quite easy to tell apart, thanks to the different sizes. And then you just follow each section there. Alright, so that's all of the cargo spine sections constructed. And yeah, some of them aren't quite as precise as I'd like, just due to the way the plastics come together and the mouldings, and it's kind of typical of Moebius. They've built quite a few of their kits, especially the Battlestar Galactica range, and sometimes the accuracy and the engineering's not quite pinpoint accurate like a Bandai or something like that. So it is what it is. It's all come together and overall it looks pretty good. But yeah, there's some of these pods are a little bit wonky if you inspect them closely. But that's all good. They're all in the right places and everything's gone together. And with the antenna array, it's all done there. Again with a few more cargo pods around that section. And I've attached the engine nozzles to the back of the engine block there. I tried my best to line them up as straight as I can, but yeah, I think they're pretty good. There, it was kind of tricky getting them all straight and lined up because the connection there is quite flat, so it's quite easy to move it around once it was setting. Alright, and here's the metal rod that goes through the spine just to keep everything lined up. So I think what I'm going to do next is start painting, and I'm going to paint them all in these sub-assemblies just to make it a little bit easier to manoeuvre. And first I'm going to prime everything in a nice black. So now with the primer applied, I'm going to do a base coat of white grey. And now over the white-grey layer, I'm going to do a final coat of flat white. Right, so with the two base coats down, it's now ready for some detail panel painting. And as you can see, the light coats I did of the white, grey and the white over the black primer has let the black come through a little bit in some of the recessed areas, just to really add more definition to the surface of the kit without needing to apply a pin wash, which wouldn't really be appropriate for this ship. So I've got some really nice detail coming out of some of those areas, and same again with the down the spine. There's just a bit of dark grey coming through along the middle there. Now, as a reference to help me paint some of the panels on the ship, I've pulled out this 2001 Filming the Future book, which I've had in my bookshelf for many years, which just happens to be a really nice resource for this kit and other Space Odyssey kits. So it's just got some really nice reference photos and stills from the movie. Although this is in black and white, you can clearly see the different shaded panels on the command module there. So it'll just be a nice reference to use when painting those. And yeah, flicking through this, I did notice that the back of the Discovery, the hexagonal units of the thrusters are all joined up with each other at the back there. But on the kit box art, they're all separated, as you can see there. So that's the way I lined them up on the model, and yeah, even if you join them together like it's supposed to be, it kind of looks bent. So it's just a slight inaccuracy with the design of the kit, because they slot into round holes at the base. You can't really easily move them in a little bit to make them all join up without them being on a slight angle. So you need to do a little bit of kit bashing there to fix that. So yeah, just a little nitpick, minor inaccuracy there. I was sure they were joined up when I was putting this kit together, but I trusted the box art for some reason. Silly mistake to make, really. But anyway, I think the main reference photo I'm going to use is down here somewhere. Yeah, these photos here. Some really nice dark panels along the back there, and along the front. Interestingly, this photo here shows the rods that would have gone down the length of the spine, which they removed before filming, just to make the ship look even more spindly. I think there's a few reference concepts. Yeah, so this was going to be the design of Discovery 1. As you can see, there's all these support rods going down the spine, and also these cooling panels. But it says they feared that these look too much like wings, so they removed them for the final design. But anyway, yeah, this is a pretty nice book. It's got lots of artwork and blueprints, set photos. Yeah, pretty good find if you can find one of these somewhere. Right, on to painting. So I've got a bunch of light greys here, which I'm going to be using for the panels. So there's the basic white and white grey, and also light gull grey, and then Russian Air Force grey. And I may mix and match some of these just to get different tones. Alright, so that's all of the panels on the command module painted, and the black for the front view screen filled in. And I ended up basically just using the Russian Air Force grey and then mixed with a little bit of white to get some lighter panels. And I found that painting over the grey several times, like 2 or 3 layers, made it a little bit darker. So I managed to get quite a bit of variation in the shades of grey there. And it's a little bit patchy here and there, but that's just due to hand painting, and reference photos it kind of looks a little bit mottled and patchy anyway, so I think I'm fine with that. And for the engine module, I just did a few light grey panels here and there, just kept it very minimal because I really can't see much evidence of different panel shading on any other parts of the Discovery. It's mainly just confined to the command module. So now the next step is to finally start putting it all together. And here's the stand and base segments. So you've got one for the command module, one for the middle of the spine, and then one for the engine at the back. 3 different parts, which is a little bit fiddly. I'm going to see if there's a solution where I can join all of these together so I can move them all at once without it all falling apart. I really don't know why Moebius just couldn't include just a thin strip of plastic or something just to help with the stand situation a little bit. It's kind of annoying having to move the model around like this. But anyway, it's just another complaint. So first of all, slot it into the back. Goes all the way to the back. And it actually protrudes just a little bit into this middle engine mount. Now the rear section of the spine, and it's got these little tabs at the end of each section there, so that would slot into that side there. So all of those joints will need to be glued. I'm just going to start gluing that now. Alright, so now with it all together and still setting, I'm just going to place it on the stand and then let the glue set. Alright, now just to make sure it's all lined up. Looks good to me. Alright, so I'll leave that to set for a while. Alright, so now it's time to join all of the three separate stand pieces together. And for that I'm using some evergreen polystyrene sheet, 0.75mm thick. And it's not quite long enough to span the whole distance, so I'm just going to need to join two pieces together. And then cut a strip 3 centimeters across so it fits the bases nicely, and then just glue them on top of the sheet. I think I might do the join under this section here, so it's a little less obvious. Yeah, that should work. It's a pretty simple, easy solution, but it'll be a lot nicer than having to handle 3 separate bases. Right, just using a bit of tape to line these up. Right, so I'm just going to fiddle around and get these all perfectly lined up, and then basically just apply some glue to the base of each, and then hopefully it'll stick nicely to the styrene. Okay, I think I'm pretty much there. It's worked out to be about 4mm from the edge of the base to the edge of the strip. And that's about 4mm each side. This one needs pushing over a bit. And now to carefully apply some Tame extra thin around each base. Now with these set in place, all that's left to do is to paint them black. But I don't want to paint where the command module will sit, as I'd risk getting black paint on the, or scuff marks on the bottom, so I'll just leave that unpainted and just paint the bottom of it. Alright, so there it is, finally all put together, and I'm quite pleased with how the base turned out. It's not the most elegant thing in the world, but it's functional, and importantly I can move the ship around without it falling apart with all the separate stands. So yeah, just a little modification to the kit, and yeah, I think it's a lot more practical. But the kit itself went together really quickly. The only really repetitive and tedious part was all of the cargo modules along the spine. And the painting was fairly simple, as you saw. Just leaving the black primer and doing a light coats of white, like white, grey and white over the top, just to let some of that black come through, to keep all of this definition. And then a few panels here and there, a little bit of hand brush painting. And yeah, pretty simple kit, but it still looks really nice. It's got lots and lots of detail, despite being quite a tiny kit. I mean, it is quite long, but very thin, very spindly, and very, very difficult to shoot because I have to pull the camera so far back just to get the whole thing in shot. But let's zoom in for a bit of a closer look. So picking up the model, it still has a little bit of flex, just due to the length and the metal rod not being that thick. So if you hold it from one end, it does droop quite a bit, but it feels quite solid with it all glued together. So yeah, the front there with the hand painted panels. I'm mostly happy with how those came out. You can still see a little bit of evidence of brush painting, but overall with all of the different shades of grey, I still think it looks quite effective. It was definitely too fiddly and too small to mask up in airbrush, just due to the different cuts of the panels and just how small some of them are. So brush painting was really the only way to go for me on that front. And I can't even really get a good front view because it goes back so far. But yeah, that's that angle. Then all of the lovely cargo pods, the antenna unit came out quite nice. Didn't do any detail painting on that, just left it white. There's a lot of the close-up set pieces where Dave was replacing the unit. Has a lot of close-up detail on this, and I can't see any painted panels or anything on there. And then the engine module at the back, just a few painted panels here and there. Nothing major. And the engine's out the back. Really happy with how the black still comes through in a lot of the recessed areas here. Gives it a lot of depth under the white. And placing it back on the stand. Nice and easy now, since it's all going to be all automatically lined up. Just place it down. Alright, so that wraps up this video. I hope you've enjoyed the build, and as always, if you've got any questions or comments, please leave them below, and I hope to see you again in the next video. So thanks for watching.